Anthony, tell us about your business and what's limiting its growth right now.
I own a digital marketing agency and a digital PR agency. What we do is we help companies navigate the AI world, digital marketing world. Right now, I think the biggest constraint I have from a business perspective is finding a junior talent that can actually help me remove what are some of the day-to-day smaller tasks, so that I can focus more on the larger, more strategic side of things for the business. And as they say, if you're working in the business, you cannot work on the business. So right now I have trouble finding the talent that has the same vision or helps me with the vision in doing the everyday smaller tasks, the junior staff. That's the biggest concern right now.
Yeah. How big is your team right now?
Right now it's 11 people. They're spread North America, some in Europe. After COVID, during COVID, actually, I decided to move to Europe. I'm currently based in the south of Italy. The operations are still all North American based, but during COVID, I decided to give up the office and allowed all my employees to work remote. And I've never looked back since.
Right. You're in Italy, and those 11 people are all over the world, or they're also in Europe?
They're all over the world. Most of them are in North America, but currently they could be anywhere. I mean, working from anywhere. It could be Bali, it could be Singapore. My agency is not geographically locked anywhere. Our clients are also all over the world.
Right. Is there a reason why all the people are in the US? Because I'm guessing if you are a global company, wouldn't it make sense to hire people in like low cost locations?
That's never been. I mean, there's nothing against hiring in other places in the world, maybe looking for cheaper labor. The people that I've been working with for the past 10 years, I have them in the office. They're people that I fully trust. And also part of the work that we do when it comes to digital marketing and creative content, creative advertising and public relations, so PR, I think 80% of the work that we do is actually being culturally relevant and culturally aware of where we're working and who we're working with. So while I can definitely find some incredible creatives and some incredible designers and some incredible writers in all corners of the world, part of the problem is if we are running a digital PR campaign for a US-based company, we need to be very, very culturally aware of what the media landscape is, what the narrative is, and what people's expectations from a communication perspective of what it looks like. So it's not just so much about creating content, it's about what the content says and obviously what we're saying. And obviously it has to be culturally relevant. That's one of the only things that I guess stopped me from looking overseas in cheaper markets. That's the only factor that's stopped me.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense if you want to, I'm guessing most of your clients are also in the US?
Yes. US, Australia, UK, Canada, of course. We have some in Latin America, but I also have employees that are of Latin American descent or have very strong connection to the Latin American world. So that's generally how we manage that. And we also, of course, over the years, we've worked with local partners. So while 11 people are constantly working with me, they're part of my agency, then we have local agencies and local contacts in all sorts of different markets. Because, for example, some of the marketing campaigns we've been working on, some product launches in 74 countries, we obviously have to rely on local contacts and, local creatives, local writers, and local public relations specialists.
Yeah. How many clients do you have right now?
Right now we have ongoing. This means there are clients that we've had for some time. They're on a retainer. There is about 8 of them.
8 clients. Okay. What is a 3-year revenue target you have set for yourself?
Well, I would love to break the million and hit 1.5.
1.5 million. And yeah. Where were you in 2025?
I was near breaking the million.
Okay. So like 900, maybe 950?
Yeah. Very, very, very close. Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So you're trying to like 1.5x your revenue in the next 3 years, which is a reasonable goal. So right now, if you do a deep dive on the services you provide and your unique selling point, can you tell us like how you are different from like other marketing agencies and other PR agencies and why clients come to you?
The main reason is, well, let's start from I guess taking a step back. It's definitely what differentiates my creative side of things is my background. Since I was the growth director, the digital marketing director for AshleyMadison.com, the infamous dating company. We've created some of the most controversial, scandalous advertising campaigns in history all over the globe. And the reason for that is because we had a product that we could not advertise on mainstream media and, even digital networks. Nobody wanted to take our money because, of course, the product was something so scandalous and so ethically in a gray zone that we had to always figure out ways to get coverage or get attention. So that's when we started actually working with what we call attention jacking or news jacking, which is creating a series of advertising campaigns that are so either offensive, scandalous, or so out there that the media will cover them, not necessarily because the product itself is something they want to cover. They want to cover this company that dared to do what other companies won't do. So generally, that background in marketing and the creative side of things is generally what gets me, I guess, a foot in the door with the clients. In today's world, I think what's getting my agency clients is the difference in how we do digital PR and digital marketing. For the longest time, PR agencies were sort of like their own little thing, like they're one world, and then the digital world was another one, and sometimes they met in the same boardroom to discuss goals, but it wasn't really an integrated solution. It never really worked together. And today with AI and with the changes that are coming from an SEO perspective with new layers, now we have GEO, AEO, they're all layers of SEO, PR, SEO, AEO, GEO, and digital marketing have pretty much become one thing. And what my agency does best is pretty much tackle all these things, puts them together, and presents the solution directly to the client. So a lot of clients we work with today is, a lot of companies have worked for the past 10 years. They've done incredible work from an SEO perspective. Now they're starting to see their organic traffic drop dramatically. Or they're starting to ask themselves, why am I not being quoted by search engines, by artificial intelligence? Or why, when they ask what's the best of this, I'm not in that list? So what our work now has been the repurposing of the content, and creating this new wave of content and authority online for these companies that are, of course, looking at the future. They know that artificial intelligence is here, and you either adjust or you adjust. You really don't have a choice at this point.
Right. Can you give a little bit of context on people who are not aware of what AshleyMadison.com is?
So AshleyMadison.com is still available online. Is a dating website for married people that are looking to have an affair.
Right. So how, and they're still in business?
You get why you say, no, you get why it was so hard to advertise, because it's definitely not Tinder and it's definitely not Match.com. Yes, of course, they are still in business.
So I would assume the ad campaign would be easier than like a boring company, no?
Well, yes and no, because for, let's call it boring company. For a boring company, you have virtually all the channels open. If you go to, Google, if you go to an advertising network, you go to YouTube and you're like, hey, I would like to advertise this product. They'll take your money. So that becomes mostly about communication, what the product does, the targeting, the right people. Because even the most boring product, a B2B selling fridges for restaurants, to the right audience, that's not boring. It's what they do. They're in the market for exact that product. So it's more about the targeting and the messaging. When you have a product that's as explosive as that, then they just don't want to take your money. They don't want to let you advertise. So while I dare say cheating exists since the beginning of times, it's definitely not something that advertising networks or the giants like Google or Facebook are willing to say, okay, yeah, advertise your product. So you have to find alternative ways to to make it through and get to people. And that's why we have to come up with very, very crazy advertising campaigns so that the media would stop on their track and say, hey, what are these people doing? So that's where we started doing newsjacking. And it's the same strategy that I use for a lot of my clients. For example, one of the latest projects I've taken on, it's this AI company based here in Italy. They work in the localization and translation industry. It's called LanguageCheck.ai, and one of the advertising campaigns that I created for them was during a conference where I delivered the pizzas to everyone, all the exhibitors on the floor. And the pizza box had a very simple message on the outside of the pizza box that had a very, very small spelling mistake that was virtually impossible to capture. When you open the box, it would say, you didn't spot the mistake. That's what LanguageCheck.ai is for. And that was like sort of like a haha moment, a very tangible way of communicating exactly what the product does. And it was a very successful PR campaign because, the company became like the pizza guys automatically in the industry because, they left a mark. And not every day somebody just gives you a pizza at a conference. But it was also a way physically to show in the real world, look what a small mistake that you missed. And most of these people are working the translation and translation industry and also in writing copy. So if you can touch it and see the problem, you've already experienced it. So half the job of selling the product, it's already done within the first 30 seconds of delivering the pizza. So that same culture, that same sort of looking at things from a creative perspective, from the company, from Ashley Madison, can be used for all sorts of other things. It's just a matter of how you look at things and the way you want to present it to the others. And that's generally what my agency does very well.
Right. Help me. I when you were explaining this story about Ashley Madison, and you had to find alternative ways. There was some dots that left unconnected. So help me connect those dots. So you said because it was a controversial product, you cannot advertise on Google, Facebook, and all the traditional media channels, right? So so you said, okay, so you can't do this, but then you found alternative ways to advertise. So
Yes.
what were the alternative ways? Are you talking about alternative channels like non-traditional big name companies, maybe like Taboola or something where you can just
No,
no?
No, it was more about um, figuring out ways how we could get journalists' attention so that we could get media coverage. So, for an example, when we launched in Italy, one of the billboards that we bought had. Number one, it was placed inside the Vatican in a very, very, very visible spot. And number two, we had three popes, and one of the pope had, three legitimate kids during his tenure. The other one had a bunch of affairs. So the message was, if three of these popes can do it, why can't you do it? Life is short, have an affair. That was the shtick, and it worked. It worked because, of course, there was absolute outrage. The billboard was taken down, I think, within 20 minutes of being put up because, of course, it's at the Vatican. How dare you? And how dare you have popes on a billboard? But that generated international media coverage. You might not even be looking you might not even be on Google looking for an affair. But that day, you were reading the Washington Post, and they were like, "Look at this disgusting company, what they did in Rome." And
Yeah.
you're like, "Oh, okay, let me look at this website." And that's newsjacking. And while that was like a very extreme, and we've done it in Texas, we've done it in a number of states over the years, and different stunts. Um, over Ultimately, that same strategy of newsjacking can be used for virtually any product in any industry. It doesn't necessarily have to be offensive. It can just be a very clever way of creating those moments that capture the interest of the media. And that's part of the work that we do as an agency, because in the world of media, in the world of SEO, in the world of earned media rankings, when it comes to artificial intelligence, etc., what we're noticing is that artificial intelligence looks at who's mostly quoted and the websites that have authority and what they're saying about a certain product. So if you are quoted, or if you're talked about on websites that have authority, so media, respected media, that's generally how we capture the market, and how we make sure that we build traffic towards your product or your services, whichever that might be.
Right. But doesn't it hurt goodwill in the marketplace? Like it might work for companies like Ashley Madison because they inherently are selling something controversial. So it makes sense to attach controversy with a controversial company. But
Of course.
if you have a more, like, say, Nike, obviously Nike is not going to do anything controversial, because then they can lose literally billions of dollars of sales
Of
overnight.
course.
So they have to
Of
play very
course.
safe. So
Of course. But
what are the
safety.
yeah. So the question is, what are the kinds of clients that are looking for this controversial angle? Or are you saying only the clients who have a controversial product would want to reach out to you, because then it's like a perfect match?
No, no. I think the controversy is part of how I built sort of like my creative toolbox. It's not always about controversy, as I was saying before with LanguageCheck.ai. It's more about the clever of a marketing campaign, which is a stunt. The pizza box, there was nothing offensive about it. So I think well, Ashley was a controversial product, and controversy was how we fed the beast. I think virtually any company, Nike, Reebok, or whatever, I think they can all use very clever marketing campaigns, and we see examples of these virtually every day. There's incredible agencies that do this kind of work, like me. It doesn't necessarily have to feed off of controversy or be offensive. What I'm saying is, in a world where virtually now you can create ads in 10 seconds, or write hundreds of ad copies with ChatGPT in minutes. What I'm saying is the differentiation. What makes a difference is actually the campaigns that are clever, that think outside of the box, that are not necessarily stuck inside their own little niche, and they do things in a certain way simply because the industry is doing it that way. Recently I saw another advertising campaign. I didn't do it, but it was brilliant. It was for DHL. It was a temperature reactive box. They shipped it with FedEx. This was DHL. And because the temperature changed, the box left, if I remember correctly, the box left from a very hot place, which the box was black, but it reacted to cold weather. When the box was delivered inside New York, they had a photographer, paparazzi style, photographing this box outside of an office. The box changing the color we call temperature, it said DHL is faster. And you could see a FedEx person delivering the box, later, like late, because DHL is faster. So this was like a massive stunt, huge success, but it went viral. So that is part of what I was saying when I think of marketing and the creative side of things that my agency does. It's thinking outside the box and trying to always push boundaries and find new ways of communicating what the product is all about. Not
Hmm.
always controversy,
I see.
and it's also not necessary, not for everyone.
Right. Okay. So help me understand this. So you're saying you would only use controversial marketing if the product itself was controversial, but if the product was more safe vanilla, then you would default to clever marketing, not necessarily controversial. Is that
Not
correct?
necessarily. Yeah, I mean, controversy is always something that I discuss with my clients. It doesn't necessarily have to be extreme or has to be offensive, but just a change in the messaging, in the way you even present the idea or you present the product, can quickly give it that little bit of fire, to get people curious about it, or get the people in the industry curious about it. So let's, even if we look at, AI agents or AI companies that are popping up every 24 hours, there is many of them that do the same thing. So if I sit down with one of them, it's like, well, what makes you different? Well, virtually nothing. Well, maybe you're better, you're faster, but those are things that are boring. They're not that easy to communicate quickly. So how do you break through the noise? And that's when we
Hmm.
start trying to figure out ways on how we can make an impression. Of course, the impression has to be positive. We don't want to be remembered negatively, but sometimes a touch of controversy in the industry can only help.
Right. So, for example, we buy and sell vacant land. How would you, if you were designing a campaign around that? It's like very boring, right? It's just vacant land, right? How would you think about
Okay.
designing a clever marketing campaign? Obviously, we don't want to, you know, think we don't want to generate controversy because we have a lot of goodwill in the marketplace. People trust us, and we don't want to break that. So,
Okay. So
how would you keep it like safe from a goodwill perspective, but also have the marketing clever so it generates more attention?
Well, clever. I would quickly think of the Oscars debacle about the stolen land. I would probably run a campaign. This piece of land has been marked safe by, without mentioning her, that said stolen land. That would be a billboard that would definitely cause some
Mm,
coverage. And that would be funny. Most people, I think, would find it funny because you're poking fun at something that happened. You're not taking a position. You're not saying she's right or wrong. You're simply saying, in this whole debacle, and you're just simply making fun. So people will recognize it. And I don't think anyone will be offended out of that, unless it's the star herself, which she might not be happy, but it doesn't really matter.
mm.
I think that would be really funny. I would actually love to develop that.
Yeah. So is that so your go-to method is going to the billboards? Is that like your default way where you start, or would you rather start test it out on Facebook and Google?
No, I mean the billboard. I think it's the easiest way to get media attention because it shows the journalists that you've put some budget. Where digital is easy to test it because virtually, in 30 minutes we can test it out and see how it works if there is any feedback. Um, but if you want media attention fast, you buy billboard because that means you're serious. And if you're serious to spend, $5,000 on a billboard, that means you really put, you care about that campaign. There is a creative team behind it. Your company's behind that campaign, and you're like, yeah, we're doing this. We're going as far as it gets with it. Of course, the same thing you could do on social media, and I think with the right video or even a series of reels that say the same thing, they could be very explosive. They could be viral. That people will share them because they're funny. But as I said, billboard, it just shows that there is real intent behind the campaign. Where digital, it's kind of like you can just turn it off. And the same
Right.
thing works when I talk with clients that are looking for digital billboards. You know, there is incredible digital billboards throughout the U.S., throughout Canada. There is entire networks dedicated to that, and they're very accessible, super easy. You can quickly buy, a series of billboards, Times Square, whatever you want. The problem is that they're volatile. They can be turned off, or you might show every 30 minutes, where a static, old fashioned billboard, it's there unless it gets taken down. And that's generally what gets the most attention. And I know it
Okay.
sounds strange in a digital world because, everything is digital. But from my perspective and in my experience, a static billboard still has its power.
Right. Okay. So that you start with the billboards. Um, does it ever happen that you come up with a campaign, say we put it on the billboard and it doesn't generate enough attention?
No, it's never happened. I've had
Hmm.
many campaigns that we placed a lot of a lot of faith in them, and we thought they would perform better from a media perspective in general, not necessarily from the billboard itself. That just because if when we do outreach with journalists and talk to the media, trying to get interviews for CEOs, founders, sometimes it's also about the current narrative and what's happening in the news, and that's something I explain also a lot to all my clients is maybe they're saying, okay, we'll launch on Monday and we're ready to go Monday. But if something super big in industry or in general, something big happens on Monday, we generally have to postpone. If there is an attention shift towards something else, we might not get the attention we deserve simply because the journalists and the media is focused on something entirely different. Doesn't mean that you will get zero attention. It just means that also that needs to be optimized.
Right. So how do you convert? So say we did a billboard, it generated attention. So how are you converting this attention into more sales for the company?
Well, the attention then needs to transform itself into trust and authority, which means that in my experience, it is something we measure for clients very often. If you have if you're featured on magazines, and let's say I'm going to use the example of your example, if there is industry papers, industry magazines, industry blogs, publications, and you're quoted repeatedly as the expert or as the person go to that knows where best to invest money. What we measure, and we prove this to our clients very often, is the conversion cycle is much shorter if you have a lot of coverage and you're considered an authority, simply because people tend to trust media or industry specific media in when they're making their decision. And I think this is something that most people will agree with. Even when we're buying, certain things, we Google for reviews or we check to see what others are saying. If that product or that person or that service or that company is trusted and quoted as an expert, automatically, psychologically, you're already almost halfway into trusting them into whatever it is that you wanted to do with them or a service you wanted to buy from
Hmm. It is a little bit ironical that you use the word trust when we start the conversation with like Ashley Madison style,
them. I know.
controversial attention and newsjacking, right? Because you're essentially saying have an affair, but then you're saying, well, I want people to trust the company. So how do you translate trust for a controversial product?
Well, I mean, you trust the product or you trust the company, even if it's controversial. You trust them to be their best at what they do, regardless of what the controversy behind the product or service might be. What I mean by that is. Even in there's other products or other services that are controversial, but you pick the company that you feel, whether it's the amount of people are talking about it, whether it's the amount of media coverage they're getting, the online noise, the amount of social media posts you see about it. That generally has an impact on how people perceive the brand, even if what they do is ultimately the opposite of being trustworthy. You know,
Right. So basically you're saying if I'm looking to have an affair, I would go with Ashley Madison because I see their billboards everywhere and I know that they're a legit company that can help me have an affair, right?
well, I think after the hacking scandal, I think they're still a very, 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 very trusted company in their space, and I think by far they're the biggest and the one that's been around the longest. And if you were to look online, they definitely are the ones that have been quoted by research papers. Universities have gone to them looking for data, like data points, into the phenomena of infidelity and all those fun things. So that goes to show you that there is an actual operation behind it. There is a real company. It's not,
Hmm.
any other website you find online. That does help with the conversion rates, because if I'm to input my credit card into a service or a website, those are some of the considerations I make.
Hmm.
And in the same thing, for example, during when Tinder exploded. Tinder exploded from a perspective of word of mouth, billboard, incredible advertising campaigns that were very viral. That's how people, you first grab their attention, and then second, when they start looking online, you have to provide them with the content and convincing them that you are the right the right company. So, for example, like we did an incredible amount of work with languagecheck.ai, one of our latest projects. If you were to look online for them, you'd find that they've been quoted and published on dozens of websites in the industry, in the tech world, in the AI world. That if I was going to buy their service or have a conversation with them and be like, okay, I want to insert your company to my workflow, into localizing my app or my services into 54 countries, one of the things that I think part of the due diligence is for any team is look online, see what this company is all about. It's not just you go straight into it and you're like, here is my credit card, or here is a wire transfer. So those are all touch points that become extremely important, and especially today, where now we see more and more what we call zero click search. Even people's behavior has changed a lot. People before 2017, 2015, up to 2 years ago, people were more used to typing in keywords for the things they were looking for, or it was way more basic way of building queries on Google, because the expectation was you'll be given a bunch of pages, you scroll through, decide which one is of interest to you, you'll read about it. Where today, people are actually typing in entire sentences or questions that are way more complex in their format, and Google will give them the answer. Now, the way these answers are generated, it's all part of SEO, AEO, and GEO. It's all one massive system. So that's becoming more important, because now when you go on Google and you're like, what is this company all about? Is it trustworthy? Should I trust it? Yes or no? Or all those questions. It's not just about being indexed. It's also about controlling what the artificial intelligence knows about you and what it will say about you.
Yeah. I do want to get into AEO, GEO. I understand SEO, search engine optimization. But before we get into that, I did have one more question regarding Ashley Madison. So, do you ever feel like you might be taking reputational risk by bringing Ashley Madison front and center, like when you talk about your experience, because it also might turn off some of the clients because they're like,
I
oh,
think
well,
for sure. I think, I mean, this was the beginning of my career, and I think if it's such a massive deal breaker ethically for a potential company or client, I think that's fair. I don't personally think that. I think there's an incredible amount of incredible talented people and agencies out there. I don't necessarily have to work with all of them, and I'm sure I'm not the right fit for a number of them too. I think what makes the difference from my perspective, the way I approach my agency and my business, and same with my team, is we've been lucky enough to actually be able to choose our projects, and I like to take on projects that excite me. And when I mean excite me, means that I know that from a creative perspective, I can actually give my best, and that I find it interesting enough to actually get creative with it. So I have conversations with founders, CEOs every day. Not every project is right for me, and I'm not necessarily the right person for them. I'm more than happy to refer to other incredible agencies or professionals in the field that I trust fully with their capacity, their skills. But as I said, I generally like to take on projects that I know I can give my best.
right. No, I mean that's understandable where it needs to be a fit. But yeah, but the question I really like, the intention behind the question was like, do you feel like it might be holding back your potential because you might be like the greatest marketer the world has ever seen, but the fact that you're attached with Ashley Madison kind of like holds you back. That was the
Yeah,
intention behind the
maybe. I
question.
think, I think potentially there is absolutely no doubt about it. I mean, I haven't, I don't work. It's been, I think, over 15 years since I've been in that office. So, I can't personally define myself as attached to the company. I've started my
Right.
career there. I've done some incredible years of creative work. It was very exciting at the time. But if 15 years later people still see me as attached to the company, I mean, there is a possibility. I don't deny it. But I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
truly, I'm hoping it doesn't, since it's been so
Yeah.
long. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but there is a possibility. Absolutely, I can
Yeah.
I can, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, okay, so let me make it all right. I know we're going deep unnecessarily, but I wanted to make sure the point went across. So I'm not saying that you can erase the past. What I'm saying is, like, if you didn't even bring up Ashley Madison, I wouldn't even know, right? So the fact that you brought it up, right, means that you're showcasing the association with Ashley Madison. So that's what I was asking. Like
Okay.
like if I so if for let's say if I work for Ashley Madison, right? I would be I would kind of like keep it under wraps. Like I wouldn't, like, personally, that's just me, right? I would like keep it under wraps, and I'll just talk about the more safer projects that did
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
right? But the fact that you brought it up, clearly, I mean, clearly you know more than me in terms of digital marketing. So that's what I was asking. Like, is that like on intention, or is like intentional that you bring it up to kind of like uh put the odds in your favor, or do you feel like there's a potential risk? How do you think about that?
I think I'm fully aware there is a potential risk, but since, if you were to Google my name, as I was saying before, and people do look up people's names, products names, and stuff, this part of my career would come up, and I don't necessarily try to hide it. I don't hide it. When people ask me, where does your career start? Truthfully, that's where it starts. I've worked in a number of other companies over the years, a number of other startups, and now I have my own agency and I work on a number of projects that I'm very passionate about. But the truth is, that was an incredible time for the internet. It was the far west of the internet. A lot of the things that are regulated today, a lot of the things that sound impossible today, were possible during that time. And I think that gives a lot of context into where my creative mind, out of the box thinking comes from. Doesn't
Mm,
necessarily mean that I want to treat every product as that one. It just means that, truthfully, that's where I've seen also the dark side of advertising and the dark
right,
side of digital marketing.
right,
It gives context into how deep I'm willing to go. But it doesn't necessarily mean that, as I said before, it doesn't necessarily mean that every product has to go to that extent.
right,
It just means that I'm willing and I've proven that I can.
right,
Doesn't necessarily mean that, marmalade company needs to necessarily become offensive or controversial, even though there are
right.
great things you could do from a controversy perspective with jam.
Yeah. Right, right. I see what you're saying. So you're basically saying you have been to the dark side, and you, at least you're aware of the dark side. So if you want to draw some elements from the dark side to make sure that on the bright side we can
Yeah,
use some of those elements to attract more attention,
exactly,
then more power
exactly.
to you, right? Okay, I get it. Okay. Um let's talk about AEO, GEO. I know SEO, search engine optimization. So what is AEO and GEO?
Okay, so AEO is answer engine optimization. So, and GEO is pretty much like the generative engine optimization. They're both, so a lot of the conversation nowadays is around, everyone is saying SEO is dead, or some sort of variation of this. Ultimately, what I think it's happening is this: if you're doing SEO like you did in 2006, then yes, SEO is dead, but it's been dead for 10 years for the people that have been doing SEO that way. SEO is still the fundamental way pages are built and the way search engines capture signals into what the page is about, into what content is most reference. Backlinks still have an importance. So all those are all the basics that still matter very much. Then AEO and GEO are simply just layers that work on top of SEO. So For example, as I was saying before, when we're talking about search engines, one of the things that we're doing for a lot of clients is repurposing content. So, for example, if what companies need to do today is think about what are our clients searching for on Google. And generally, they're questions. It's no longer just keywords, they're full blown questions. And it's about repurposing the content so that actual search engines will use an answer and quote those websites into giving those answers. I know it sounds very complex, but it's actually fairly easy to once you kind of understand how search engines work and how generative engines work as well. So, for example, I'll try to simplify this as much as possible. If you're constantly quoted on authority websites, which is media, about a certain topic, those signals do matter more than having 100 backlinks with keywords or keyword stuffing like it did in the past. The difference is that today search engines can also understand the content of the pages, which means that if you're writing an article about a certain topic, search engines will actually be able to understand the meaning. And if that answers a question that a user is asking, you will be presented directly to the search engine. Same thing. It works. The same way is for ChatGPT, for Anthropic, which is Anthropic is Claude. But the way it works is the core of how SEO, AEO, and GEO work is it's creating content, and that is on authority websites. That's why we do a lot of digital PR. Digital PR is at the root of everything, because these authority websites is where the artificial intelligence bots go and read the content and see who's quoted, which links are being used. And that's what companies nowadays are looking to capture, which is, the next frontier of internet attention and internet traffic.
So you mentioned the word digital PR. So these are like website like Forbes.com, New York Times, like all these big websites, right?
Yeah,
So
digital PR is, yeah.
how do you get your clients on these websites?
Well, over the years, you just develop sort of a contacts flywheel. People in the industry, journalists, media people, and it's not necessarily. This is something that I also have taught years ago in one of the classes in Toronto. It's not necessarily having a friendly relationship with a journalist, let's say at Forbes. It's also about understanding what they write about and what to give them as a pitch when presenting, whether it's the product, whether it's data, whether it's a service. Like, for example, if I was to use your company that buys land, if you went to a journalist and you said, hey, if I went to a journalist and said, hey, I have this company, blah blah blah, it does this, they will literally be like, what's the story? There is no story. It's just, okay, great. What am I talking about? Why should I write? Like, there is absolutely no reason why it should be mentioned and why it should be used in the media to begin with. But if me and you were developing, for example, sort of some statistical data that only you have from your database, and said, hey, look, we have this data from this company that, for example, the changes in the demand for the purchase of land, and that's data that you get from your own sources or your own database, or and we go to journalists that writes about this. First of all, we would see which journalists are writing about this sort of topic. Then you contact them and you're like, hey, I have this data, and you pitch what the message would be. And likely they will be like, yeah, this is a very timely, I think it's interesting, I want the data. And sometimes they'll even say, I want the exclusive, I want to be the only one that runs with this information. And then what happens is, you as the CEO are, of course, the CEO, you're quoted because you're the one that presented this data. The company is the owner of that data. And then virtually every other journalist or blogger that's looking to reinforce their thesis and say, hey, I'm right because this is the data, guess whose data they're going to be using? They're going to be using your data. So you automatically are
Mm.
building backlinks towards your company, but you're also building towards that article. That article gets picked up, gets read by the bots on by search engines and by artificial intelligence. And what happens? Next thing you know, you're going to be quoted by humans, but also by machines.
Yeah. So, okay. So based on what you have said so far, so it seems like you're really good at generating demand and generating attention, right?
Yes.
But when you pitch this to other companies, I'm sure like if you pitch this to me, I my question would be, all right, so I understand that you have all this experience, you can generate demand, but how does this demand translate into more sales for my company?
Well, ultimately, you're going to be getting traffic, a lot more traffic. And generally, what I see in a lot of companies, and it's a conversation that I have fairly often, is about what you do once you get the attention. And that's a lot of companies. That's where the step that's breaking. We build an incredible engine for building the traffic. They're getting targeted traffic. They capture the keywords they want, but then once they start getting the attention, they don't really know what to do. And that's some to some extent. I also help them in managing what it is, the from lead nurturing to the close. Because if you have constantly articles going out and people being interested in your services and getting in touch with you, if you have this pipeline full of leads, what do you do with them? Then it's not necessarily a problem of me as a consultant, agency. Then it becomes a problem internal to your company, because you might get 50 leads a week, but what are you doing with them? Then it becomes your capacity to nurture and close the deals.
Hmm. So you're saying that then it's my headache. You did a good job. Now it's my problem on solving, right?
I mean, we also help clients in putting together what it is, the lead nurturing, I guess, scenario, and the different
Right.
steps and where they are, how to categorize them, the messaging, what to say, because of course we're if we can write a pitch and convince a journalist to cover a story or talk about a service or a product, we're also good at convincing people onto why they should continue the conversation with you, for example, into
Right.
buying or doing whatever action is that they have to do. But
Right.
if you don't have a good team behind, it doesn't matter the amount of leads you get if you're not capable of closing them. And in your case, I would think it's not like Amazon where you just buy and we capture the conversion. I would think it's a more complex sort of deal closing process.
Yeah.
Um, if you suck, I, there's
Right.
very little I can do.
Yeah. What's your ideal customer profile like? Is it like a large company, medium-sized company? How many employees? What's the revenue for those companies usually, generally speaking?
Well, my favorite, the ones that I enjoy to work the most, is the ones that are have already hit the million. They're looking to go to the 10. That's because generally they haven't had the chance. Those incredible companies that have incredible potential, but they got lost sort of in the process into the everyday tasks, and they kind of like they don't know how to place themselves from a media perspective, authority perspective. The CEO could be incredibly talented, but just doesn't have the visibility. And to me, that's very exciting, because I've also helped a lot of my clients, a lot of companies, into getting funding. And part of getting funding is also having a media profile. If a company CEO, a company president is quoted on MSNBC, on AI World Today, on whatever, that makes a difference for a potential investor, because that shows your capacity to capture your little slice of the market and being an authority in that. So to me,
Mm.
that's super exciting to work on those projects, because there is a massive white canvas, and we can work together in pretty much filling out all the little pieces of the puzzle into creating what ultimately is a large company.
Right. So you said like raising capital. Is it like raising capital? Are you thinking in terms of like connecting with your existing network of people you know who fund companies like this? Or are you talking about starting a fund somehow and gathering accredited investors. How do you think about funding?
Well, definitely, I definitely help them through my own network. But also, funding is also packaging the company correctly so that when you go knocking at doors of different funds and different investors, that the company is ready and looks like it's ready to take the funds and knows what and will know what to do with them. It's not just so much about convincing somebody to give you the money, but it's also about packaging it properly so that they're confident that the second you get that check as a company, you will know exactly what the first 6 months will look like, the first year will look like, the 3 year will look like. So it's coming up with like an entire timeline that convince and makes investors confident that the team behind, and also help them also put together the team, that in the next 3, 4, 5 years you know exactly where in the market you're going to be and exactly what you will be doing.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to go back to the constraint that you mentioned at the start of this episode, finding talent. Is that the biggest constraint that's preventing you from hitting 1.5 million?
Yeah, because I see myself always busy working on in the business rather than on the business. So
Hmm.
um, the I have incredible senior designers, senior analysts, senior PR people. The biggest problem is finding junior talent. Um, that's number one. I think the biggest issue for me right now is actually finding talent that sees eye to eye with the rhythm and the vision of the consulting, the agency. That's been the biggest problem, I think, for me,
Yeah. I mean, you
and
mentioned
it's
you
not
have
easy.
yeah, you mentioned you have a lot of senior talent. So I'm assuming, and these are all US based. So I'm guessing your staff costs are high, right?
Yes, they're fairly well. They're U.S. and Canada, but yes, they're fairly high.
Yeah. So
I mean, not high, the normal market.
right. Um. So how are you thinking about fixing this hiring problem? Like how are you attracting talent right now? Because like a lot of companies, they don't even offer remote. So the fact that you're offering remote is like a big benefit. So I'm a little bit surprised that you're having problem with this because of the inherent benefit that comes with working with you. So are you relying on recruiters? Do you have like LinkedIn ads? How are you thinking of hiring?
I have a series of recruiters and headhunters that are helping me. I think one of the biggest problems is not the fact that they can work remotely is definitely a plus. I've noticed. Also, not for everyone. Some people are actually they do prefer the office, and they think that without an office they will lack focus. So it's not necessarily for everyone working from home.
Mhm.
But I think one of the limit of having a team that's remote is the onboarding. That makes things, and I do realize that it's not easy with people that I've been working with for years now. It's easy because we're already pretty much in tune with each other. We understand each other's language, and we don't really need to be physically present in the room. A quick message, the other person understands what we're saying. Where for a person that just out of just started, that can become, I think it can be very very hard, and it can feel almost like impossible to catch up with everyone else, because you're sitting alone at home and all these people are saying all these things, but there is no real rapport. There is no office environment where you can ask a colleague, what does that mean, why did he say that. So I think that's one of the limit, and also one of the constraints, personally, I think.
Yeah. Are you not getting enough applicants applying to your jobs, or are you saying there's enough applicants? It's just that not enough people get hired?
No, applicants, I'm definitely, the last batch I received, I think it was about 97 resumes. So definitely lots. The point is finding the right profile.
Hmm. So you're saying it takes a lot of time to go through those 97 resumes? Is that the
No, no,
biggest?
no. No, no, no. I mean, I can quickly scan through resumes and quickly know if there is a fit. The point is, it's finding that the person that has the same, sort of energy, the sort of aggressiveness that I look for, in somebody that will work for my agency. That's been hard.
Hmm. And then usually do the first round, or you have like people who do the first rounds and then they send you for the final round? How's the interviewing
Uh,
structured?
I like to do, no, the recruiters generally do, they filter, but don't necessarily talk to the person. They just, filter out things that are so far out what I'm looking for. But generally, if there is somebody that's of interest, I like to talk to them myself, first, and then the second round would be with some of the other key elements in the team. Also to
Ah,
see
I see.
from a chemistry perspective, to see, if, the chemistry is very important when it comes to, um, working with, the team in a creative environment where ideas are, thrown around as crazy as they are. I never give
Yeah.
limits to what my, I mean, I'm a creative. I surround myself with other creative people. My friends are creatives. um, no idea is not, any idea is, we will consider it, as crazy
Yeah.
as that sound. It's crazy, say it aloud, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that requires a certain level of chemistry in the team for them to feel comfortable, but also for the other person to make sure that there is a fit, and it doesn't become a constraint, but it becomes an addition, that's an extra brain, instead of
Yeah.
limiting the others.
Yeah. So here's how. So I have a 16% team, and hiring is like never been a constraint for us. And I think one of the reasons is because when I hire, I never talk to the person until they have passed all the rounds. So I do the final round. So I have my junior people in my team do the first round, then the mid tier people do the second round, then the senior people do the third round, and if they pass all that, then it comes to me and I do the final round. And the reason for that is because I don't my time is the most valuable in my company, so I don't want to waste time. And I think that might be the reason why you're so frustrated with hiring, because
Yeah.
you're doing the first round. And you because like if there are 100 resumes, right? 97 of them will be rejected. Like they won't even come to me, and only 3 people will come to me, right? So if I put myself on the front lines and I'm doing 100 interviews, then I will be frustrated just like you are, right? And
Oh,
then
for
I will
sure.
be, yeah, yeah, and I would be like, I don't want to deal with this. So yeah, so maybe try that, and it might help. Um,
I just I could, and I've been told this many, 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 many times. It's just that I like to be, I like to get the feel for it, first, and then the team
okay,
after. I like to do it but in other companies where I've worked at, the process you've mentioned, it was exactly how we did it, and
yeah,
it worked.
yeah.
So.
I'm guessing right now your thought process is you're trying to save the team's time, right?
Well, yeah, save the team's time, but also, I to protect them from a shit hire.
No, but even if you're the final hire, you're still gonna protect them from a bad hire, right?
Well,
Is
yes, for sure. I
yeah,
just like to be the filter, get the vibe for the person. See if I like I would like working with that person if there is good chemistry. And then present it to the others, and then they can just, go off and ask questions, which is generally not necessarily about asking questions about their experience, their validity of their resume. It's mostly just about, if we were to work on this, that, and that, and that, let's chat.
mm,
And generally, and because on the technical side of things, I have incredible staff. Like, as I said, I have incredible analysts, SEO people. That's not something I'm looking for. But when we're looking for creatives, and there's, never enough creatives, that's generally how I like to to handle the interviews. And it's
Yeah.
also one of the things I've mentioned on a number of interviews and podcasts is when people ask me, what do you think the job that will be safest from artificial intelligence? And I always say it's the creatives.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. One question or one area we didn't cover is customer acquisition. So right now you mentioned you have like 7 or 8 customers, right?
Hmm.
How do you acquire these customers? Like how did you, if you were to draw a pie chart, how would you attribute where these customers came from? What, like referrals, networking, paid ads, organic content? How would you draw that pie chart?
Would say referral definitely, for sure. Then organic, then absolutely the biggest is definitely media coverage, leadership, thought leadership articles that I publish or I'm quoted in different publications. Um, but ultimately, people, all those sort of channels, they lead back to my website or my LinkedIn, and people get in touch with me. And
Right.
generally we have a very quick, very similar to the way I hire people. I hire the client and they also hire me. It has to be mutual. There's got to be chemistry. We have a quick conversation. What are your goals? What are your objectives? Is my approach can my approach be of use? Generally they give me generally what I ask them is for them to give me a week. I talk about it with my team. We figure out if from a creative perspective, PR perspective, media perspective, what can we do in 6 months realistically for them, and I get back to them with a proposal. Luckily, for most of the clients that we work with, our engagements go for a very very long time. The 8 clients I mentioned, we've probably been working with them for I think over 4 years. So they're engagements that go on for a very long time. We kind of become their their digital sort of right arm, in managing all the aspects of their digital presence, with me generally almost acting as a fractional CMO.
Right. What would be the percentages you would assign to each piece? So you mentioned referrals, you mentioned media coverage, organic, you mentioned networking. How would you, what percentage of the pie is the biggest percentage media coverage?
Yes, for sure. Media coverage, as in like articles where I'm quoted. Yes, I would say
Right.
that is the
Organic.
largest.
So like
Um,
around 70%, 60%?
I would say about 50% all media. So
Okay.
articles, places where I'm quoted, where they ask for my expertise and I talk about my approach on, creative PR, digital marketing. And I would say about 30% organic traffic and 20 referral, something like that.
Hmm. So organic, when you say organic traffic, this is like SEO type
Yeah,
organic, like,
just people coming directly from search engines onto my website. So there is
I
nothing in
see.
between. Yeah, because of
I
course
see.
other media could be considered, but that's a referral traffic from a third party website.
Right, right, right. Okay. And have you seen the SEO traffic going down as you know, with all these generative
Yes,
AI tools?
yes, but
You
we've
have,
seen also bots from ChatGPT, OpenAI, and all the other ones increase. So
yeah.
one decreases, the other one is making up for it. So that's something that's to be expected, and I think we're going to see more of it in the coming months and years. To be honest.
Yeah. You mentioned when a customer does start working with you, they tend to stay for like 4+ years, or even longer, right?
Yeah.
Do you have capacity for more clients right now?
Yes.
Okay. So you're actively looking for more, right?
Yeah, and as I said, I choose my clients very carefully. So I'm always looking for new exciting ventures, new exciting projects.
Hmm.
And as I was saying before, I act as a fractional CMO or head of growth, whatever whatever it is, because when you work with a client for 6 months, a year, you also get to know their internal team, and I act as an advisor. So while in the back we're doing the creative work, the PR work, the media, and I talk to the CEO and I'm like, give me a quote for this. What's your position on this? Let's try to get coverage on
Hmm.
this. I also then I also get to know the entire staff in the company. So I act as an advisor. So they come to me saying, "Hey, we're thinking of running this advertising campaign for this particular thing," and I give them my feedback from a creative perspective, the copy, the messaging, and also sometimes. I get incredible ideas from those conversations with them because I'm like, oh, this is actually a great pitch I could use from a media perspective if we do it this way. So it's a constant exchange of ideas where they give me some stuff where I can actually work it out and continue my work, and also give them my advice from as an advisor, external advisor, and saying, hey, the perception is this way, so I think we can do it differently, and
Mm-hmm. Anthony, this has been a great episode. Thanks for sharing all the wisdom and all the stories from Ashley Madison and all the knowledge. If someone is watching this and they're like, all right, I clearly want to work with Anthony, or I want to learn from it, or learn from him, or I want to hang out with him, what's the best place for them to reach out?
I would say my website, anthonynealmarci.com. And otherwise, you can find me on LinkedIn under my name. I'm always on there as well. So, yeah.
Anthony, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Thank you.